The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with light. Floating crystals hung from the ceiling, each one glowing with the colors of a different species. Hundreds of delegates sat in curved rows that rose up like steps in a theater. At the center stood a single platform where speakers could address the entire chamber. Park stood on that platform now. He was 58 years old with gray hair and calm eyes. He wore the simple dark uniform of a human diplomat. No medals, no decorations, just clean cloth and straight shoulders. Behind him sat Sara, his chief aide. She was 30 years younger with sharp eyes that missed nothing. The vote had just finished. 7 species had voted against humanity. 4 had voted in favor. The rest had chosen not to vote at all. The Frontier Redistribution Act had passed. 3 human colony worlds would be taken away and given to other species. These were worlds that humans had found as dead rocks floating in empty space, worlds with no air, no water, no life. Humans had spent 80 years turning them into gardens. They had built cities and farms and schools. Children had been born there. Old people had died there. Generations had called these places home. Now they would belong to others. High Arbiter of the Dominion leaned forward in his seat. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes like black stones. His voice echoed through the chamber. The Council has spoken. Humanity will surrender the designated worlds within 1 standard year. This is the will of the galaxy. Park did not move. He did not raise his voice. He simply waited until the chamber grew quiet. "May I speak?" he asked. Waved a hand, "You may." Park looked around the room. He saw faces of many shapes and colors. Some looked away. Some watched him with curiosity. A few, like Counselor of the Collective, looked at him with something like sadness. 200 years ago, Park began, humanity came to this council. We were young. We were eager. We wanted to learn and to help. We offered our hands in friendship. He paused. In those 200 years, human engineers have built stations that keep millions alive. Human doctors have cured diseases on worlds they had never seen before. Human teachers have lived on distant planets for decades, teaching children who were not their own. Human ships have patrolled dangerous space, asking for nothing in return. Made a sound of impatience. We did not ask for these things. No, Park agreed. You did not ask, we offered because that is who we are. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. A hologram appeared above his hand. It showed a planet, dead, brown, covered in dust and craters. This is 447b, 83 years ago. The image changed. The same planet, but now it was blue and green. Clouds floated above oceans. Forests covered the continents. This is 447b today. Humans made this. We took nothing from anyone. We built something from nothing. He looked at, and you have voted to take it from us. His black eyes showed no emotion. The Council has determined that humanity's resource utilization is inefficient. More advanced species can make better use of these worlds. I see. Park turned off the hologram. He put the device back in his pocket. For a long moment he stood in silence. Then he bowed a small bow, respectful but not deep. The Galactic Council has made its position clear, he said. Humanity thanks you for this clarity. He straightened. Humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Compact, effective immediately. We wish you well. The chamber went completely silent. Counselor stood up. She was small, with silver fur and large dark eyes. Ambassador Park, please, let us discuss this. There must be room for negotiation. Park shook his head slowly. There is nothing to negotiate. We came offering friendship. The Council has shown us what that friendship is worth. He paused. We do not belong here. We see that now. He turned and walked toward the exit. Sara stood and followed him. Their footsteps echoed in the silent hall. You cannot simply leave, called out. There are treaties, obligations. Park stopped at the door. He did not turn around. Read your own laws, High Arbiter. Any species may withdraw from the compact with immediate effect. We break no treaty by leaving. We only break our own hearts. And then he was gone. The news spread across human space within hours. There were no protests, no angry speeches, no threats of war. Instead, something quieter happened. On Station 12, a human engineer named finished her shift. She had worked there for 30 years. She knew every wire, every pipe, every system. She trained her replacement for 3 days, wrote detailed notes, and then packed her single bag. On III, a human agricultural specialist named Bay harvested his last crop of drought-resistant grain. He had developed the strain himself over 15 years. He left the seeds and the growing instructions with the local farmers. Then he boarded a ship home. In hospitals and schools and stations across council space, humans did the same. They finished their work. They said goodbye. They left everything in good order. No anger, no bitterness, just quiet sadness and polite farewells. Within 72 hours, the withdrawal was complete. Counselor stood at her window and watched the last human transport ship leave. She had tried to contact Park 6 times. Each time, she received the same response. "We thank you for your concern. We wish you well." She pressed her hand against the cold glass. "What have we done?" she whispered. The stars gave no answer, and the ship carrying the last humans disappeared into the darkness, taking with it 200 years of quiet help that no one had ever thought to appreciate. Until now. 6 months had passed since the humans left. At first, no one noticed much difference. The council continued its meetings. Ships still flew between stars. Life went on as it always had. Then the problems began. Orbital Station 12 was one of the largest trade hubs in council space. Thousands of ships passed through it every day. Millions of beings lived and worked there. The station was old, built over 300 years from parts made by dozens of different species. It should not have worked at all, but it did work perfectly for decades. Because had made it work. Administrator was he had taken over the station after the humans left. He was intelligent and experienced. He had managed smaller stations for 20 years. He thought he understood how things worked. He was wrong. The first failure came in Section 7. A power relay stopped working. The engineers looked at it and shook their heads. The relay was connected to 15 other systems in ways that made no sense. Why would life support be linked to cargo bay doors? Why would the water recycling system share power with the communication array? Human engineering, one of them said with disgust, unnecessarily complex. They tried to fix the relay using standard methods. This caused a cascade failure that shut down 3 more sections. 200 people died when the emergency airlocks failed to close properly. Administrator found notes in the engineering office. They were detailed and careful. She had written them in 5 different languages so anyone could understand. The notes explained that the strange connections were not mistakes. They were backup systems. If one part failed, another part would take over. The station was designed to keep people alive even when things went wrong. But the engineers had not read the notes. They had assumed they knew better. Sent a message to human space, asking if could return to help. He received a polite reply. "We appreciate your request. However, as humanity is no longer part of the Galactic Compact, we are not authorized to send personnel to council facilities. We wish you well." Far away on III, a different kind of crisis was growing. There were a gentle people with silver fur and large eyes. Their world was beautiful but difficult. The soil was poor. Water was scarce. For centuries, they had struggled to grow enough food. Then the humans came. Bay was not a soldier or a diplomat. He was a farmer. He had spent 15 years on III, working in the dirt under the hot sun. He studied the soil. He tested the water. He crossbred plants again and again until he created a grain that could grow in the harsh conditions. His grain saved millions of lives. But after the humans left, the government decided to return to their original crops. Base grain was primitive human work. Surely the superior scientists could do better. They could not. The first harvest failed completely. The second was worse. By the 6th month, food reserves were running low. Children were hungry. Old people were dying. Counselor stood in a withered field and wept. The plants around her were brown and dead. The ground was cracked and dry. She remembered Bay's kind face, his patient hands, his gentle voice explaining how the grain needed to be planted just so. She had never thanked him, not once in 15 years. That night she sent a private message to human space. She begged for help. She offered anything in return. A human woman named I Am responded. Her message was short and polite. Counselor, we are sorry for the suffering of your people. However, as we are no longer members of the Galactic Compact, we cannot interfere in council affairs. We wish you well. Read those words again and again. We wish you well. The same phrase over and over, polite, distant, final. Meanwhile, in the outer rim of council space, ships were burning. Pirates had always been a problem in the distant regions, but for decades they had been kept under control. Human patrol ships had hunted them constantly, protecting trade routes that humans rarely used themselves. Why did they do it? No one had ever asked. It was simply something humans did. Now those patrol ships were gone. Within 3 months, piracy rates tripled. Trade ships refused to travel certain routes. Colonies sent desperate calls for help. The Dominion, which had led the vote against humanity, found itself unable to protect its own borders. High Arbiter demanded that other species take over the patrols. No one volunteered. The work was dangerous and expensive. There was no profit in it. The humans had done it for free, because they thought it was right. And in medical stations across council space, supplies began to run out. 17 critical medicines had been developed by human researchers. These researchers had asked for nothing. They had simply created the medicines and shared them with everyone. They had taught others how to make them. But no one had paid attention. Why learn to make something when humans would always provide it? Now there were no humans, and the medicines were gone. A child died of a fever that human medicine could have cured in hours. An elder suffered for weeks from a disease that humans had conquered decades ago. On world after world, beings who had never thought about humans began to notice their absence. Counselor gathered reports from across council space. She read them alone in her office, late at night, while her world starved outside her window. The humans had been everywhere. They had helped everyone. They had asked for nothing. And the council had rewarded them by stealing their homes. Put her head in her hands. She thought of Park's calm face, his quiet voice, his small respectful bow before he walked away. We do not belong here, he had said. We see that now. For the first time, understood what those words truly meant. The humans had not left in anger. They had left in sorrow. They had finally understood that their help was not wanted. And now, 6 months later, the galaxy was beginning to understand what it had lost. But understanding came too late to save the 200 dead on Station 12. Too late to save the starving children on III. Too late to save anyone. The humans were gone, and they had taken their quiet kindness with them. 2 years had passed since humanity walked away. The galaxy had changed in ways no one had expected. The galactic economy had fallen by 23%. Trade routes that once buzzed with activity now sat empty and dangerous. Stations that once glowed with life now flickered with failing lights. And on dozens of worlds, beings looked up at the stars and wondered how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. On Earth, a historian named Shin sat in a quiet room surrounded by old records. She had spent 2 years collecting stories from humans who had returned from council space. Engineers, doctors, teachers, farmers, soldiers, people who had spent their lives helping others. She was writing a book, not for revenge, not for anger, just to remember. An old engineer named sat across from her. She was back on Earth now, teaching young students how to build things that lasted. I worked on Station 12 for 30 years, said. When I arrived, the station was falling apart. Different species had built different sections. Nothing connected properly. The whole thing should have collapsed. But it did not collapse, Shin said. No, because I spent 30 years making it work, smiled sadly. I learned every system. I created connections that kept people safe. When one thing broke, another thing would take over. It was not pretty, but it worked. And now, smile faded. I heard that Section 7 collapsed, 200 dead. They tried to fix a relay without understanding why it was built that way. She paused. I left notes, detailed notes, in 5 languages. They did not read them. Why would they? I was just a human. What could I possibly know? Shin wrote down her words carefully. This was the story she heard again and again. Humans who had given everything, who had been ignored, dismissed, forgotten. Until they were gone. Far from Earth, in the dark space between stars, a human merchant ship called the Steady Wind moved slowly through the void. Its captain was a man named O. He was 45 years old, with a weathered face and careful eyes. The Steady Wind was not a large ship. It carried simple goods between human colonies. It never entered council space anymore. But today, 3 vessels had surrounded it. O watched them on his screen. They were not warships. They were merchant vessels like his own, but they were empty. Their cargo holds had nothing to sell. A message came through. A trade minister appeared on the screen. His face was thin and tired. Human vessel, we request trade, we have credits, we will pay any price. O was quiet for a moment. He remembered the council vote 2 years ago. He remembered how they had abstained. They had not voted against humanity, but they had not voted for them either. What do you need? He asked. Medicine, food, machine parts, anything. The trade minister's voice was desperate. Our supply lines have collapsed. Pirates have taken everything. Our people are suffering. O felt something twist in his chest. He was not a cruel man. He did not enjoy seeing others suffer. But he remembered something else too. He remembered his daughter, born on 447b. She had taken her first steps on that world. Now that world belonged to strangers who had never planted a single seed there. I am sorry, O said. We trade with friends. The council made clear that we are not friends. The trade minister's face fell. Please, our children are hungry. Human children were happy on worlds they built with their own hands. The council took those worlds away. O's voice was not angry, it was just tired. We wish you well. He ended the transmission. The ships floated there for a long time. Then, slowly, they turned and drifted away into the darkness. O sat alone on his bridge. He did not feel good about what he had done, but he also knew that kindness had to mean something. If you helped everyone who hurt you, what was the point of being kind? Meanwhile, in the great halls of the Dominion, High Arbiter faced rebellion. 3 of his systems had risen up against him. Their leaders stood before him now, their faces hard with anger. You drove away the humans, one of them said. They were the only ones who helped us when the storms came. They asked for nothing. They saved thousands. They were a lesser species, said, but his voice was not as strong as it used to be. They were the only species that cared. The rebel leader stepped forward. You took their worlds to show your power, and now we have nothing, no medicine, no trade, no help when disasters strike. Had no answer. He had been so certain that humans did not matter. They were young. They were soft. They spent their time helping others instead of building empires. He had not understood that helping others was their empire. an empire of trust and gratitude that stretched across the galaxy. And he had destroyed it with a single vote. On III, Counselor walked through a hospital filled with sick children. The beds stretched on and on. Small faces looked up at her with tired eyes. A doctor approached her. His fur was matted with exhaustion. "We have run out of the human medicines," he said. "We cannot make more. We do not know how." Knelt beside a small girl. The child was burning with fever. In the old days, before the humans left, Bay would have known what to do. Human doctors would have come running with their strange medicines and their gentle hands. Now there was no one. "I am sorry," whispered to the child. "I am so sorry." The child did not answer. She was too weak. That night, Counselor began organizing something new. She reached out to others who felt as she did. Delegates who had voted against humanity and now regretted it. Leaders who had watched their world suffer and finally understood. They formed a quiet alliance. They began making plans. Somehow they would reach humanity. Somehow they would make things right. But deep down knew the truth. You could not fix some things with words. Trust, once broken, took years to rebuild. The humans had offered their hands in friendship for 200 years. The galaxy had slapped those hands away. Now the galaxy would have to learn what it meant to reach out and find nothing there. 5 years had passed since the humans walked away. Now, for the first time, a delegation from the Galactic Council was traveling to human space. The ship was small. It carried only 12 delegates. Counselor stood at the front window, watching the stars slide past. Behind her sat representatives from 6 different species. Some had voted against humanity. Some had abstained. All of them had come to understand their mistake. And in the back of the ship, sitting alone, was former High Arbiter. He was no longer the ruler of the Dominion. His people had removed him from power 3 years ago. He was thin now, and his blue skin had faded to gray. The pride that once filled his black eyes was gone. Had insisted that he come. "If we are to apologize," she had said, "we must bring the one who was most wrong." Had agreed without argument. He had nothing left to argue for. The ship crossed into human space, and immediately everything changed. Had expected to find humanity struggling. Cut off from galactic trade, surely they would be suffering. Surely they would be desperate and willing to negotiate. Instead, she saw wonder. Human stations gleamed in the starlight, larger and more advanced than anything in Council space. Ships moved in perfect formation, their designs elegant and efficient. And everywhere there were people, working, building, living. A human escort ship approached them. A calm voice came through the speakers. "Council delegation, you are cleared to proceed to Waypoint Station. Please follow the guide beacon." No threats, no anger, just polite efficiency. Waypoint Station was enormous. It hung in space like a silver wheel, spinning slowly against the darkness. The delegation's ship docked at a small port on the outer ring. A human woman was waiting for them. She was young, perhaps 40, with black hair and steady eyes. She wore a simple gray suit with no decorations. "I am," she said, "Foreign Minister of the Human Federation. Welcome to our space." Stepped forward. "Minister, thank you for receiving us. We have come to—" "Please," raised a hand. "Let us speak inside. You have traveled far." She led them through clean corridors to a simple room. There was a table with chairs. Water and plain bread sat in the center. No ceremony, no luxury, just basic hospitality. They sat. For a moment no one spoke. Then stood. His movements were slow, like an old man carrying a heavy weight. "I must speak," he said. His voice was rough. "I was High Arbiter when the vote was taken. I led the effort to take your worlds. I called your people primitive. I laughed at your ambassador." He paused. His hands were shaking. "I was wrong. I was foolish and proud and blind. My people have suffered because of my arrogance, Millions have died, and it is my fault." He lowered his head. "I do not ask for forgiveness. I only ask that you hear my apology." The room was silent. Looked at him for a long moment. Her face showed nothing. "We hear you," she said finally, "but I must be clear about something." She leaned forward. "We do not require your apology. What we required was your respect. Those are different things." Nodded slowly. "I understand." "Do you?" His voice was not angry, it was something worse. It was tired. "For 200 years, humans helped everyone. We asked for nothing. We built, we healed, we taught. And when we asked only to keep the worlds we created from dust and rock, we were told we did not deserve them." She stood and walked to the window. Outside, human ships moved gracefully through space. "We did not leave in anger. We left in sorrow. We finally understood that our help was not valued, that we were not valued." Spoke softly. "Minister, my world is dying. Our children are sick. Our crops have failed. I know we have no right to ask, but I am begging you, please help us." Was silent for a long moment. "My grandmother," she said quietly, "was born on III. She was a teacher there. She spent 40 years helping children learn to read. When the humans were ordered to leave, she cried for 3 days. She turned a face. She died last year. She never stopped loving your people, even after everything." Tears rolled down silver fur. "I am sorry, I am so sorry." Nodded slowly. "We will help your people, not because of the council, despite it, because that is who we are." The delegation spent 3 days in human space. A human admiral named Lee escorted them on a tour of human worlds. They saw cities that sparkled with clean energy. They saw farms that grew food for billions. They saw hospitals preparing medicine and supply packages, labeled with the names of worlds that had voted against humanity. Stopped before a school. Through the windows she could see human children studying. On the walls were maps and pictures of dozens of species. The children were learning. They were learning. They were learning the languages of people who had treated them as lesser beings. "Why," she asked Admiral Lee, "why teach your children about us, after what we did?" Lee was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He considered the question carefully. "Because hatred is heavy," he said. "It takes energy to carry. Our children do not need that weight." He paused. "And because someday things might be different, we want to be ready." Watched the children laughing and studying together. "You are preparing to forgive us," she said. "We already have." Lee's voice was gentle. "Forgiveness is not the question. Trust must be rebuilt. That takes time." On the last day, gave them something unexpected. It was a data chip containing the formulas for all 17 medicines that council species needed. It also contained instructions for growing drought-resistant crops and maintenance guides for complex station systems. "This is everything we know," she said. "We give it freely, no payment required." Stared at the chip in his hands. "After everything we did to you, you give us this." Almost smiled, almost. "Kindness is not transactional," she said. "If it were, it would not be kindness." The delegation's ship departed that evening. As it crossed out of human space, stood at the window and watched the stars. She held the data chip tightly. She had come hopping for mercy. She had received something greater. She had received grace. Now she understood what the council had truly lost 5 years ago. Not workers, not resources, not technology. They had lost the only species in the galaxy that helped others simply because it was right. And somehow, impossibly, that species was still willing to help. Closed her eyes and made a promise to herself. She would change the council. She would rebuild trust. She would make sure that humanity never had to walk away again. It would take years. It might take decades. But she would not stop until it was done. 7 years had passed since the humans walked away. Now, at last, they were coming back. The Galactic Council chamber looked different now. The floating crystals still hung from the ceiling, but many of them had changed color. Some species had left. New ones had joined. And at the center of the great curved hall, the structure of power had shifted completely. High Arbiter sat in the central chair. She had worked for 5 years to reach this position. She had built alliances, changed laws, and slowly transformed the council from the inside. The old ways were gone. The arrogance that had driven humanity away was no longer welcome. Today, the chamber was full. Every species had sent their highest representatives. They had come to witness something historic. The great doors opened. Park walked in. He was 65 now. His hair was completely white and he moved more slowly than before, but his eyes were the same, calm, patient, steady. Behind him walked Sara. She was no longer his aide. She was now the foreign minister of the Human Federation. But today, she had asked to walk beside her old mentor one last time. The chamber fell silent as they approached the central platform. Park stood where he had stood 7 years ago, the same spot, the same lights, but everything else had changed. He looked around the room. He saw familiar faces and new ones. He saw watching him with hope in her large, dark eyes. He saw the young delegate, barely 30 years old, sitting where Administrator would have sat if he had not died on Station 12. For a long moment, Park did not speak. Then slowly he began. 7 years ago, I stood here and said goodbye. I said that humanity did not belong. I said that you had shown us what our friendship was worth. His voice was soft, but it carried through the entire chamber. I was not angry when I said those words. I was sad. We had come to the stars hopping to find friends. We had spent 200 years trying to be good neighbors, and in the end we were told that our work did not matter, that our homes could be taken, that we were not equal. He paused. So we left. We did not fight. We did not threaten. We simply put our hands in our pockets and walked home. Leaned forward. Her heart was beating fast. We watched from a distance, Park continued. We saw the stations fail. We saw the famines. We saw the piracy and the sickness and the suffering. We could have said that you deserved it. We could have let our anger grow. He shook his head slowly. But that is not who we are. We helped anyway. We sent medicine. We shared knowledge. We answered calls for aid from species that had voted to take our worlds. He looked directly at. And now you have asked us to return. You have changed your laws. You have rebuilt your council. You have shown us that you understand what went wrong. Her voice was clear and strong. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally invite humanity to rejoin the Galactic Compact. We offer the return of all 3 colony worlds, with additional territory as compensation for your suffering. We offer permanent equal standing, with veto power over any decision that affects human interests. We offer a new beginning. She paused. And we offer our deepest apology for what we did, for what we failed to see, for taking so long to understand. The chamber was completely silent. Park nodded slowly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data pad. Humanity accepts. The chamber erupted in sound. Delegates cheered and clapped. Some wept. After 7 years of darkness, light was finally returning. But Park raised his hand, and the room fell silent again. We accept, he said, but we need you to understand something. We do not return because we need you. Our worlds are thriving. Our people are strong. We return because we believe in second chances. We return because we hope that this time will be different. He looked around the room one final time. Do not make us regret this hope. After the ceremony, a young woman approached Park. She was the daughter of Administrator, the man who had struggled to save Station 12 after the humans left. Ambassador Park, she said, her voice was quiet. My father died 3 years ago. The station eventually stabilized, but he worked himself to death trying to save it. Park looked at her with gentle eyes. I am sorry for your loss. In his final message to me, he spoke of a human engineer. He said she always smiled, she always taught, she always had time for anyone who asked. The young woman's eyes were wet. He said he wished he had learned from her while she was there. He said she was the best person he ever knew. Park was quiet for a moment, then he nodded. Is still alive. She teaches on Earth now. I am sure she would be glad to hear that your father remembered her. The young woman wiped her eyes. Can humans forgive us after everything? Park reached out and gently touched her shoulder. We already have. Forgiveness is not the question. Trust must be rebuilt. That takes time. He smiled slightly. But time is something we have. Later that evening, Sara found her old mentor standing alone on a balcony. He was looking up at the stars. You did it, she said. After all these years, you brought us home. Park shook his head. Not home. Home is Earth. Home is our colonies. This is just a place we visit. He was quiet for a moment. But perhaps it can become something more. Perhaps this time they will see us clearly. What do you think will happen now? Park considered the question. The stars above him were the same stars that had watched humanity take its first steps into space. The same stars that had seen them build and help and heal. The same stars that had witnessed their quiet departure. The same as before, he said finally. We will help, we will build, we will heal. That is what humans do. The only difference is, he smiled. This time they know what they almost lost. Sora stood beside him in comfortable silence. Far below in the streets of Station Prime, humans and aliens walked together for the first time in 7 years. Some were cautious. Some were curious. A few reached out to shake hands, to exchange words, to begin the long, slow process of rebuilding trust. It would not be easy. 7 years of absence had left scars. Some would never fully heal. But humans were patient. They had always been patient. And somewhere in the crowd, a child looked up at a human doctor who was handing out medicine. The child did not know about politics or history or betrayal. She only knew that she had been sick, and now she was getting better. Thank you, she said in her small voice. The doctor smiled and knelt down to her level. You are welcome, he said. That is what we do. And in those simple words was everything humanity had ever been. Not conquerors, not rulers, not masters of the galaxy. Just helpers, just healers, just people who believed that kindness mattered. The stars shone down on a galaxy that was finally beginning to understand. And humanity, quiet and steady as always, got back to work.